Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I'll tell you what, today is an absolutely outstanding day. I've got a special guest, Mikey Lucas. He is the CEO and partner of MSB Global Services and Matrix Data Center. We have had a heck of a chat getting ready for this podcast, and I mean, we got green data center galore coming around the corner. How are you, sir?
Outstanding, Stu. Thank you. It's a COO. I wish I was a CEO. COO.
Oh, COO. Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I just gave you a promotion. Now I just took that promotion. I almost feel like a tax person here.
Oh, don't let them listen to this. I'm not getting paid. No.
Oh, well, tell us a bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, so we're in the process right now to further the large language model of AI to help humanity. And I know that oftentimes gets to be bumper sticker and people kind of hear that a lot, but I was convinced that I could either sit on the background and watch it happen, or I can be a part of it. Nice. Being in my background, working for Elon Musk back in 2015, 2016, I knew, I was like, hey, he said that multiple times, that he could be either a part of the space race or he could sit there and watch it. He could be a part of the renewable space or he could sit there and watch it. And I kind of take that into consideration with what I do. And as you know, all the news broadcasters, social media is saying AI is bad, AI is bad. And then there's half the people that say AI is good. And I'm like, I've been using AI for 4 or 5 years, and I don't have a technology background, but I am self-made, which basically means, or self-taught rather, where, obviously not to dilute what my mentors have taught me or people that have taught me like yourself. Right. But, I've had to learn things I would say the hard and long way. And with AI now, I'm able to learn the way that the style of how I learn, I'm able to learn significantly faster. I mean, I'm able to put in essentially a 4-year engineering degree in about 4 months from AI. And so the goal with the Matrix Data Center is to have good people, which is what we need. We need more American patriots that are good people running AI, good people with money, rather than letting, the elephant in the room, which everybody knows, the bad people with money. Right. I'm not talking, Republicans or Democrats. I'm talking about adversaries to the state of America.
Oh, absolutely. China and everything else. We're very much in a huge battle. And as Secretary Wright, who is one of the 3 energy dominance apocalypse horsemen, as I call him, you've got Secretary Chris Wright, and you got Secretary Doug Burgum, and you got Secretary Lee Zeldin leading the charge for energy dominance. We got to have energy dominance in order to be dominant in AI. But in your case, how are you handling building out a data center? There's 2 big problems with a data center: money and behind the meter in the grid. How are you handling those 2 biggies?
Yeah, so that's a gigantic topic in and of itself. So when it comes to data centers, I don't think people really understand them. On layman terms, a data center is essentially the size of 2 Costco's with, instead of, toilet paper, waters, and chicken, you have racks of computers with tons of cooling and, lighting and things like that in it, right? So that's like layman terms. These things pull an average data center will pull roughly 30 to 40,000 homes worth of power. And so the hard part about data centers is people don't realize how much they're using data centers on a daily basis. What we're using right now, this recording platform is now hosted through a computer that's hosted and powered in a data center. People's cell phones. If you go on your cell phone and look back on all of your photos, go back to 5 years ago, okay, all of that, it just magically pulls up. Well, where is that stored at? That's stored in a computer, a supercomputer that's powered and cooled in a space, in a shell, somewhere here in the United States. And your text messages, right? If you go back all the way back to all your text messages with your wife and your mom and look at photos from 5 years ago, those are all stored somewhere. They're not just on the cell phone. There's too much quote unquote data to store it on your cell phone. So it's stored, and then, like what people call the cloud. So they understand the cloud. So the big issue is that I would say is people are using it more and more and more, right? So I started noticing this about 3 years ago, is when I'm working, because I work pretty much 24/7, between like 7 and 10 p.m., I started noticing my internet service to get drained, like not as fast. And I was like, what's going on? Just use kind of common sense. And I was like, oh, everyone's streaming 4K YouTube or Netflix. So that's why my internet's going down. What the heck? And so people are actually using it more and more and more. They just don't realize that. And the infrastructure behind that is through data centers. So we're out here building data centers. They call it the AI gold rush. And right now there is 2 problems: power and financing. Now, the good news is that the money has come back in the market So there's people knocking on my door asking us to fund the project, which is great. That's phenomenal. That's awesome. If this was 3 years ago, it would have been a little bit harder. And I know that because I run a private equity firm, and there's the Zero Banking Alliance, which basically was run by the big three,
right?
State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock, and they basically said, there's no money that's going to be invested into dirty energy. So that was very hard for us to get money for those projects. But data centers, there's a significant return on it, but I would say that today, right this very second, today, as we're filming this, there's probably in the ballpark of 15 to 20% of people, and that's being liberal, that use AI, that use this. Now, everyone's, grandma, grandpa to the little 3-year-old kid uses some level of a data center with their videos on YouTube or their text messages. So they're all using it, but now you have this AI, and there is a hard part that's coming up that, yes, there's conversations around, productivity of people losing their jobs and stuff like that. But long story short, that's kind of data centers in and of itself. The two major problems is, yes, it is money. So we're not really seeing that as an example. We've got people knocking on our door. They just want to know the story, which is the key part. Is people think that they can just go buy land and put a data center on it. Well, it's not. It doesn't work like that. It's not like, you can't just go buy land and put a gigawatt data center on, or even a 500 megawatt data center on it, which is, again, a large data center, 30 or 40 Costco's. You can't just do that, because the hard part is the power. And so when I would go to these data center investment conferences or data center conferences, the room that was filled the most and people were not on their cell phones on LinkedIn or X or whatever, TikTok, they were watching, was the power panels. And so that's when I was like, wait a second. I've been working on behind the meter power for the last over a decade now. Like, I know the solution. We got this. And so that's when I teamed up with initially as a consultant with MSB, and then realized, very quickly that I could work my way into the company and actually be a massive benefit, someone that has a can-do attitude, whatever it takes mindset to actually fulfill on what's never been done before, which is a 3-gigawatt data center on one campus. So it's very interesting. But the power solution essentially is right now is going to be, do you have grid power? And the answer is no. So if you were to go and buy land to go build, a complex of houses, a master plan, you would need fiber, water, and power, right?
Right.
And, it takes a very long time. I think that's where most people get stuck at, is they think, oh, I've got this cheap land, I can just, put a data center on it. It's like, no, it's like the same thing. It's like, well, if you got to do feasibility studies. And so it's the same thing as like, I got this cheap land in West Texas. I'm going to go drill a hole and extract the hydrocarbons out of it. It's like, not necessarily, right? There's some wildcatters out there. I'm sure people will appreciate that. But yeah, the main thing right now in Texas, the good part about Texas is that through ERCOT, they seem to be on the front runner of wanting to be the ones that attract all of the data centers. The hard part is that we are our own grid, which means we can't import energy outside of ERCOT, which powers about 90% of the utility grid. But it does seem that the regulators are pushing towards not just renewable, which is, roughly 90% of the power that's come on the Texas utility grid over the last couple of years in a row, but now looking more into nuclear, which we were talking with some nuclear companies today in the last few months, hearing what they're talking about. I know President Trump said the other day in Pennsylvania that he was going to permit a nuclear site in 2 weeks, and I was like, hey, what about our site? Like, let's do that. But yeah, I would love to know kind of what your listeners want to know specifics, because I'm in the heat of it right now, Stu.
This is cool. And I almost think very much that we need a series on a discussion on AI data center and ERCOT, because this is such a huge issue. I just interviewed Ron Gusick, the CEO of Liberty Energy, and they created, as a oil and gas service providing company, oil and gas goes up and down as the market goes. And they created behind the meter data center creation whole division with a flatline cash flow to offset that. What a brilliant plan. Yeah. And so companies and entrepreneurs and leaders like yourself have a real plan. And when I just interviewed the gentleman with the data center out in Abilene, that is an amazing story as well too. This is a gigantic topic, and people want to find out about investments. Where do they make investments that they can get returns on? Because in renewable energy, the renewable energy returns have been less than 2% across the world. They've been losing money. So it's actually been very abysmal. When you look at the returns in oil and gas, it has been tremendous. In fact, that's what my day job is evaluating oil and gas deals. So that I think is going to be some of the biggest questions you're going to be able to answer is, how do I make money? How do you make money? And that is, how do you get people invested in your company?
So we're talking about roughly a $50 billion project. And so
pretty good.
for the average investor, for the accredited investor, one of the ways they can do that is through specific funds, maybe infrastructure funds. Obviously, they can go to American Energy Fund because American Energy Fund is the one that's partnered up with MSB. They can technically do that, but it's not a typical retail investor. Some of the ways that they can make money right now is, and again, this is not financial advice, but I'm buying more NVIDIA. I'm buying more Oracle stock, right? So like to the typical investor, you could see a trend here that NVIDIA, the semiconductor companies they have their backlog orders for years. Right. There's gigawatts and soon to be terawatts of backlog in orders for those types of companies. So if you're, the average American and you don't necessarily have hundreds of thousands, if not multiple millions of dollars to invest, that is definitely something that I'm personally doing and staying. And the hard part is, there's going to be a lot of those AI companies that are out there. You can find some startups, some seed capital kind of concepts. I would be very careful with those. But if you have the appetite for a riskier kind of venture, like an Uber back in the early 2000s or 2010s, but great if you can find them. But really it's
so. If I was sorry to interrupt, but if I was a accredited investor and wanted to reach out to you and say, what kind of returns compared to the stock market would I get in your fund?
So our fund is, we just shoot for above alpha. Okay. So we're looking for 15 to 20% returns on everything that we're doing. That was the first 3 years. Post those 3 years, we've moved into now powering data centers. So infrastructure. And with infrastructure, the returns are very lucrative, which is why there's a lot of money being pushed into that. So infrastructure funds.
You had me at very lucrative.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same for us. It's essentially the same amount of work, the same amount of brain power. Yes, a few more, obviously, people on the team, but the problems and the pay are significantly more. And we're still solving the same problem of sustainable energy future. It's just that now, instead of talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, we're talking in the billions of dollars, sector now. So, the returns in data centers or powering data centers, it's a utility. Who doesn't pay their power bill? And especially when you have a tier one creditor like an Oracle and AWS, Meta, Google, OpenAI, AI, those types of companies, they pay their power bill. So the returns are astronomical. We don't gouge their eyes out with, Oracle's not an idiot. They negotiate very, very well. They buy, essentially the program is they do what's called a power purchase agreement. So they buy the power, by the kilowatt or by the watt at a specific rate for 20 to 40 years. And you're now investing, just like for me, I always knew for years, when I was selling solar panels, like if I were to just I've actually advised, some people, I not advised, but kind of said, hey, if you really want to pay off your solar panels faster, take the money, the $1,200 you're saving on your residential solar panels that I just sold you, and put that money into your, Duke Energy or, one of the power companies that you're currently in, because they're not only are they giving you dividends, but now you can take that money and pay off your solar panels faster, because utilities, that's the one of the main necessities that people will not turn off. They won't pay their car bill. They'll not pay their car bill before they don't pay their light bill. They won't pay their water bill before they don't pay their light bill. They'll pay their light bill.
Oh, yeah. Now, data centers are getting a black eye in many different ways. And when you take a look at the back east with the government AI data centers, that the huge transmission lines that are coming in are adding in, like in Maryland and in New Jersey, they went from $600 a month on their power bill to $900 a month in the past few months. because of the extra transmission lines that the government is having to put in. And I'm like going, that's just not right. That's kind of like data centers need to be behind the meter and budgeting in on their own things. Have you ever seen the movie Young Frankenstein when all the villagers started wanting to burn down the place just because the monster was running?
I haven't, no.
It's like a Frankenstein movie. I mean, when you can imagine everybody all mad at the Frankenstein monster, and I don't want to think as AI as a Frankenstein monster, but holy smokes, Batman, people are going to get upset when they see their power bills go up.
Now, Stu, here's the other side of the coin. Is by no means am I sticking up for AI data centers in this position. You want to know who the real problem is? It's the power companies. Yep. It's the last large scale monopoly that is out there. And the aging infrastructure that we have is really, really bad. And that's one of the reasons why it wakes me up on a daily basis, because my passion is to have.
I think you need about 3 or 4 more relays in there, because the power poles. People don't know a huge.
No, people don't see it, because why? No. They just turn the lights on. The lights turn on, and they're like, oh well, I don't have a problem. Well, if you've been overseas, which I'm sure you have, there's not consistent power. And it takes, don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of money to maintain these lines and a lot of skilled workers to do that. But what really frustrates me the most, and I don't want to open up too much of a can of worms, but I don't care. I'll stick up for the people. Right. When I start to see C-suite executives getting bonused out tens and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, right, for a grid that is rising rates, that has all these rising rates and instability, that to me that's a problem. Because why are you getting paid so much money? And I get why they're getting paid so much money, because people are just paying the bill. But the American people really don't have a voice. They're just, here's what the power companies say. What are you going to do? Well, guess what? Guess what, Stu? Guess what they can do? They can go buy some Tesla Powerwalls and their own solar panels and finance them. And it will be cheaper than over a long period of time and right away. And they actually now have a choice. Not that we have to talk about solar panels, but if the American people actually want to stand up to the utility company, they go finance on a 20, 30-year loan for some tier 1 solar panels and go get some Tesla Powerwalls or whatever whatever battery packs you want. And you're not off the grid, but you're now self-sufficient. And if you really want to stick it to the man, you can stick it to the man by creating your own power on site, which is the whole behind the meter concept and factor here, which within data centers, it's the same issue, because when you're connected to the grid, so we have 2 problems here. So you have the end users, the hyperscalers, right? The Oracles, Amazons, and all these guys, right? They go, because of history, they go, we want power from the grid. And I tell them, well, you're going to be waiting in line for 6 to 8 years if you want the scale of what you want. And so we're going to create and bring in utility scale power to on site or through a private use network, a PUN, and have a off-site power plant with our own transmission lines for your site. And that is the ultimate way of how to solve the problem. And it's starting to, thankfully, through the news, and I know that the Energy Secretary and the President are talking about it currently today, like if we're going to be the leader in AI or even manufacturing and bring manufacturing back to America, right? People don't realize how bad the utility grid actually is. It is a national security issue. It is really, really, really bad. Let alone if a drunk person hits a transformer on the side, your whole neighborhood's out. Like, think about that, but on like steroids, a lot of them. Right. It's extremely bad. So the only way to harden our grid is to spend tons and tons and tons of money, or to have businesses and homeowners produce their own power on site. And now, again, I'm not saying put up wind turbines in your backyard, but however ugly solar panels are, that's fine. But if you really want to be an American and help out and do your part as an American citizen, put up solar on your house. And again, I'm not saying you have to, put it on the front of your house, whatever. But if you really want to take, a chunk out of this and do your part, that's one way to help the grid. It's bad, Stu. And you know that, really bad. I don't got to convince you. You know how bad it is. And it's very, 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 very bad.
I like the way Mikey, I'm just having a blast listening to you. This is almost refreshing. I've been out here going as a business owner and as a businessman. Business CEOs need to look at their business model now differently than they did 10 years ago.
Correct.
You need to have a line item down here for energy. And if your business is energy dependent, you need to have your own power plant line item down here.
Correct.
It is no longer an option, and distributed management and microgrids are going to be the defining factor of whether or not you're in business or not. And you nailed it. I'm over here going, yay, way to go, man, rock on.
Oh, I hadn't even got started. You want to talk about the other thing that scares me?
No. Don't, now you're you get me all happy and everything here. Don't do that.
Here's another thing that is practically that people can start to see. And I want to say this so that people's reticular activating systems start to see it, because it's as bad as it gets. Now you talk about the number 1 and number 2 selling car, which is the Tesla Model Y and a Tesla Model 3. Okay. Right. They have sold more cars in the last couple of years than any other car. And those are what? Those are not petrochemical cars. They're not diesel. They are 100% electric vehicles. Meaning you need to plug them into your house or plug them into a charging station somewhere that the grid already doesn't have. And so we have another problem here where, and by all means, I love my Tesla. I've had Tesla since 2019. Love my Tesla. My wife drives a Tesla. I've had, I'm not against having regular cars. And don't get me wrong, I understand the argument of like, yes, it does take me when I drive to Dallas, when I drive to Houston from Dallas, it takes me an extra hour to charge. Yes, I get it. Anyways, that's besides the point. I'm not saying the argument of whether people should drive electric cars or not. They just are. Okay. They are. And so there's been millions of these cars. And if a person drives an average of 20,000 miles a year, or even 15,000 miles a year, Stu, now we have gigawatts of power that are now going to be pulled from the grid that we didn't already have. And so you put more strain and stress onto this grid that it scares me, because when I start to see more electric vehicles on the road, and here's the problem, Stu, ready? If you go look at the Energy Administration, they say that electric cars are there's 1%. I'm like, I can pull out right here on the main street outside of my house and click 100 cars, and it's not 1 to 2%. It's in the ballpark of 15 to 30% are electric vehicles. And it's not just Teslas, Cadillacs. There's all of them. It's a problem.
Right. I think it's an unsung problem that is going to get worse. And as we see, China is really going to be exporting out more and more. They just have increased their fleet for car shipments, car carriers, Rolos, the roll on, roll off carriers, unbelievably. So they are gearing up to own the cheap EV market.
The hard part about that is that their traditional markets, where they're going to, and so I want to step back a little bit and give America some credit. We are by far the cleanest environment as far as air and water and streams and oceans. We are by far the cleanest. So let's not. I don't want to downplay that and say, oh well, America's dirty. We are by far the cleanest. Just go to the cleanair.gov and look up the map. We are the cleanest by a long shot. You can actually drink toilet water here, right? Hose water. You can drink toilet water here. Overseas, you don't even want to touch the water, right?
Oh, no.
When you're brushing your teeth, you want to bring your own water bottle. I've traveled overseas. I do a lot of philanthropy overseas with my wife, and unfortunately, you can't use the water there. So we are very, very, very clean here. But at the rapid pace that we are growing, we have thoughts and feelings about how we're going to solve this problem without real action. So I said again, Stu, I can either sit around and talk crap about it, or I can go be the solution and put my foot in the game. And yes, I'm a college dropout. I don't have I don't have a college degree, and I don't have all of these accolades that a lot of the people here, like I was telling you earlier in Texas, it's very tribal here. I don't have an A&M or a TCU or whatever degree. Right. But I do have 800 books and boots on ground experience of building companies and solving not only just problems, but identifying trends. And one of the trends is in the utility scale behind the meter power through virtual power plants, microgrids, so on and so forth. And so that's one of the things that our company, American Energy Fund, invested into, not because it makes a ton of money, which it does, but because it's actually what needs to happen for America. I just didn't want to talk about it or hear, Fox or CNN or these guys talk about it. And, when I'm talking to people, it's like, who actually wants to solve the problem? Well, let me sign up and stick my neck out, maybe get my neck chopped off, and probably fail a couple of times. Stu, I've failed multiple times. What I'm doing right now could fail.
Right.
But I'm going to keep on going, because this is more important than the reputation of Mikey Lucas, because I always tell people I'm like a weed. I keep growing back. You can't stop me. You're going to have to kill me to stop me.
Yeah, there you go. And actually, weeds are, it turns out they're healthy.
Just like cholesterol and all this other saturated fat.
Yeah, dandelions are actually good for you. Who knew that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, mowed weeds actually look good. So being a weed is not necessarily a bad thing. Right. I think it's fantastic. I'm having an absolute blast, and I think the only problem is we've got way too much material to talk about. And I think we need to plan on having a couple more podcasts with specific topics to cover on this. How do people find you and your company?
So they find Mikey by just going to Googling Mikey Lucas. It's MikeyLucas.com. That's all of updates of what I'm doing. All over social media, it's the same thing. Mikey, MikeyLucas, all over LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook. All my stuff is public. I put out a lot of, content about what we're doing, updates. I try to just essentially document what I'm doing. I don't really try to create content. When I create content, I do create content, but when I create it, it doesn't feel as authentic. As you can tell, I'm not reading a script here. This is just authentic. This is much better. But the all over social media is Mikey Lucas. The two companies that I'm involved in is American Energy Fund. That's American Energy Fund IO and MSBGlobalServices.com. So if you're a hyperscaler and you want 3 gigs, we've got a site for you. And that's that.
I'll tell you what, this has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm really looking forward to our next recording. And what do you see coming around the corner in the short run on this? When you take a look at Lee Zeldin in the EPA cutting regulations, that's getting energy prices down. You see nuclear, we've got 10 nuclear reactors that have been fast-tracked and through those things. You've got the Department of the Interior opening up the whole Alaska Reserve. You've got just a smorgasbord of everything that they can do to lower energy prices. But I'm seeing we've got some heavy lifting to do from the administration because prices are still going to go up. And that's a major impact on the next the midterms next year.
Yeah, I actually want to point out a problem.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm actually very long and pro natural gas.
Yep.
But I actually think that we are eventually going to run into a shortage of natural gas. I'm not saying I'm not a doomsdayer saying, the 2012, the world's going to end thing. But with the amount of electronics that just households, let alone EVs, and now you have, factories that are manufacturing items, and then you throw in data centers. We're talking about this data center in Texas and Sulphur Springs is going to almost consume a BCF a day, which is like a metric, is so much energy, is so much natural gas. It's not even funny. And that's just one of the hundreds of data centers. And the majority of them, they want to be powered by natural gas. They can't be powered by solar and batteries because it's not baseload energy. By all means, I love solar. I love batteries. But at the end of the day, these hyperscalers, gigawatts and above, you can't have just solar. I mean, we got quoted out as an example, 450 megawatts of solar and about 1,000 megawatt hours of battery, and I was going to power one of the 30 buildings. And I'm like, okay, this is just financially, not going to work.
And thanks for your participation trophy here.
yeah. I mean, why don't we put Oracle in, just like Disney does, in like Mickey Mouse, figures. We'll put Oracle on the top and then we'll just not even connect them because that's about as good as it's going to get. No, the problem that I actually see here is that there's two problems. Number one is that I'm actually convinced, and no one's talking about this. I'm probably the only one that's going to be saying this, but I'm actually convinced that we don't have enough natural gas. And I know that we have a lot, don't get me wrong, but I'm actually convinced that we're going to eventually run out of natural gas. And so that scares me. And no one's talking about that. And when no one's talking about it, and I'm the only guy talking about it, I think I'm onto something here.
I think you are onto it. And I've been looking into it. We have got enough. When you take a look at the Marcellus, you take a look at the Haynesville, you take a look at the other part of that equation is the Permian. People are saying the Permian is near maxed out, but now what's happening is in the Permian is that it's producing more natural gas as it is been developed so much. So is it going to reach max production? No, the demand for molecules is changing like you just mentioned. So I think that's going to be some future fantastic discussions of what's coming around the corner. I think nuclear will be able to offload a lot of that demand. Coal is going to have to keep us up and running. Natural gas is going to have to keep us up and running. So we've got I've never seen a energy news cycle like I've seen.
Yeah, we're in an energy super cycle, and it's very interesting because if you look at 2010 to 2015, they were saying we had peaked out at oil and gas. And then you had new technology, fracking, come in, and we got back up. I'm convinced that Americans will innovate and that we will find ways to get this gas and oil, petrochemicals out of the ground. I'm convinced of that. But we do need better technology. And I've seen it. I've been pitched on it. I've seen some really cool technology that's coming out that, in theory, similar to nuclear, will help us with our baseload power as we continue to grow and become manufacturing dominant again, let alone AI dominant. And then the second factor, Stu, is this, and we can end here if we need to go, but I don't know how long we got. But the second factor is this: is skilled labor. And everyone's talking about, the problem to data centers is power. It's like, first of all, okay, we can solve that. It's actually skilled labor. And so my generation, they told us to go get a degree in, underwater basket weaving. And most of the people that are my age, 20 and 30-year-olds, I'm 33 now, have degrees that they don't use the degree in. By no means am I undermining degrees. My wife is in school right now. She's a nurse. She had to get, obviously, educated to be that in that role. But the majority of people are not going into skilled trades. And I used to watch Mike Rowe growing up, Dirty Jobs, or I forget what the name of the show was, but and I used to watch him growing up, and that's what I wanted to be, right? I wanted to be a trash man, and I wanted to be a skilled laborer. But that's going to be the main issue, I would say, is that the majority of people, the younger generations coming into the workforce, they want, and nothing against this. I have a social media. You have a social media. They want to be TikTok famous. Nothing against that. Be TikTok famous at your job as a go viral as a welder, as a plumber, as a trash man. Like, go viral doing that. You could do that. Like, day in the life of a plumber, day in the life of a welder, day in the life of a engineer, right? Day in the life of an architect. Do it. People like to watch that. That's what our generation likes to watch, is a day in the life, rather than education on certain things. But that's the other problem that I see on the horizon. It's not a matter of.
I don't want to compliment. And I am sorry for being nice, and I want to put this as possibly the worst podcast you've ever been on, because I don't want to be nice to you. I want to be really rude and mean.
Please.
And everything. But this is really important, because you think about the data centers that are being done, the electrical upgrades to the grid, the electrification, the remanufacturing, the new shipyards coming in. We're talking skilled labor, high-paying jobs. Mike Rowe would be happy about this conversation. And Mike Rowe, if you ever hear this, I've asked your media group several times to come on this podcast. And Mikey, you're invited. If I can get Mike Rowe, I'm going to have you on the podcast, because this is absolutely critical. I'm 65, but I'm having the time of my life doing a podcast, but I've got a welder, I've got a backhoe, I've got all this other stuff, and I built my own microgrid at my house. I put all the solar on here. I've got twin generator backup generators, and I'm trying to figure out all this kind of stuff, because I want to make sure I understand what I'm talking about when I'm doing this. So even at 65, even though I welded when I was in college and all that kind of stuff, and in high school, hey, it is fun getting out there and doing the actual work. I just put in a 20-foot by 18-inch culvert on my other place right down the road. I had a drain problem, put in a tin horn, and absolutely had a blast on the backhoe getting out there and doing it. I couldn't get anybody to do it. So I went and bought a backhoe, bought all the stuff, did everything myself. And that's what it's going to take, because there's going to be a huge need for skilled labor.
And what's really cool about that, Stu, is you probably watch YouTube and ask AI to help you how to do it. Hey, I don't know how to do this. This is my end goal. What I want to do. Show me how to do this. Where am I going to fail? And teach me how to do this. If you were my engineering teacher or whatever in backhoeing, and you had 20 years experience in backhoeing.
And I've watched YouTube on how to do the welding, and I'm out there, I've got the hell. I'll even put out some things of me besides welding my hand to the table, but I'm having a blast. But kids can make a bunch of money without going into debt. That is huge.
Yeah. I think the hard part with my generation right now is they were told essentially that if you go to college, you're going to get this 6-figure job and life is just going to be easy. It's much harder. And I need my generation to know that. And I talk about that, Stu, all the time, is how much harder it is going to be. It took me 10 years to get to the point where I'm at now. And thankfully, because of, not skilled labor, but because of books and some mentors, by knocking on doors, which is what I used to do, I was able to write my own paycheck. If I didn't want to make if I wanted to make 60 grand a year working as a busser at, fine dining steakhouses in Las Vegas, which is what I did prior to that, right. I hit a ceiling, but I was like, I know I want to do more. I want to make six figures, and I can't drive the car or live in the house that I want to live in or live in the high rise that I want to live in if I'm doing what I'm doing. So finding jobs that would allow me to, without a college degree, one of those was sales. And I got into that, and I sold a product, solar, that was something that I would sell to my mom and my grandma, which I did. Right. And I love that product. So people need to look into sales and skilled labor. And if it's not going to be easy. I wrote this in my book. You don't have to love what you do. Right. Just love who you're becoming through that. Like, life is happening
how cool is
to
that?
you. Life is happening for you, not to you.
That is extremely cool. Well, I'll tell you what, Mikey, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate our time today. And I'm looking forward to our next podcast, because you got me all worked up, and I'm ready to go dig on my backhoe here. I think this is going to be an absolute blast.
I feel like I didn't answer any of your questions. I apologize.
Oh, no, you did. But all you did is create about 19 more follow-up questions that will follow up on the next episode. So
you can imagine I have some dialogue around those, because I've thought intensely about how to solve these problems.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for your time.